When we think of J.R.R. Tolkien's writing career, certain very obvious works come to mind. The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, and secondarily the posthumous Silmarillion. Where most people are concerned, these three works are the beginning and the end of Tolkien's career as an author. Naturally, this isn't the case, and while the amount of books that he published while alive were limited, there were countless works published during his lifetime outside of simply novels. Academic essays, novellas, commentaries, translations, and most importantly, for me at least, poems. As we've covered before, poems were the lifeblood of Tolkien's writing journey, and more often than not, it was from short poems that his larger creative ideas grew. Throughout his earlier years especially, Tolkien was very active in an array of literary societies and was keenly interested in publishing his poems in school newspapers and journals. He would share them personally too and gather feedback from which he would bring more and more poems next time. One of such instances, in fact, the very earliest instance of a publication by J.R.R. Tolkien, took place in 1911, while he was still attending King Edward's School. It was made under a pseudonym, and it is a short poem published as entry 186 in the 26th issue of the King Edward's School Chronicle. Tolkien, only about 19 years old at the time, had just helped found the TCBS, or the Tea Club and Barovian Society, alongside his friends, and thus the year 1911 can be identified as perhaps one of young Tolkien's most impactful on his life journey. Regardless, in this publication, this poem, we can find traces of the J.R.R. Tolkien, author of The Lord of the Rings, that we know today. The work itself is titled The Battle of the Eastern Field. While relatively short, it seemingly tells a story of epic proportions, a story of war and of perseverance, of opposing sides almost going to the bitter end. And like classic Tolkien, it is prefaced by making clear that this piece of writing was simply found by him and published, and that the extent of his involvement is simply recovery and preservation. This is the exact same literary mechanism with which he would go on to frame The Lord of the Rings through the Red Book, and earlier still, the Book of Lost Tales. And this isn't the only similarity in writing character that we can identify from over 40 years before The Lord of the Rings was ever published. The preface goes, "On Friday, March 31st, I came across this curious fragment in the waste paper basket, in the prefect's room. Much of it was so blotted that I could not decipher it. I publish it with emendations of my own. Signed G.A.B. G.A.B. We unfortunately have no idea what this stands for, nor do we know when exactly the poem was written or if any other versions of it still exist out there in the wild. The only thing we know is that G.A.B. is Tolkien, as he made an annotated copy shortly thereafter, signed with his actual initials. Although, as I'm sure you'll discover for yourself, the text has so much of Tolkien's classic tales and humor that we could have traced it back to him even if it had remained anonymous. As we read, keep in mind that whenever asterisks appear, that part of the original text is supposed to be blotted and lost forever as part of Tolkien's meta-narrative. The poem begins, stanza 1. Ho rattles sound your war note, ho trumpets loudly bray, the clans will strive and gory writhe upon the field today. Today the walls and blackboards are hung with flaunting script, from Atlas on the staircase to Bogey's darkling crypt. Each knight is robed in scarlet or clad in olive green, a gallant crest upon each breast is proudly heaving seen. While flows our yellow river, while stands the great pavil, that Thursday in the lantern term shall be a beanfeast still. Stanza 2. Thus spake the green-clad chieftain to the foe in scarlet dight, shall none wrest the silver grail, nor dare another fight. And the doughty foeman answered, Aye, the goblet shall be won, and on a famous field of war, great deeds of progress done. So hard by Brahm's great river, they bade their hosts to meet, arrayed upon the eastern field, for victory or defeat. Normally, I'd stop here and simply paraphrase what happens next, but for the life of me, I couldn't have you miss out on Tolkien's writing, and I doubt I could do it justice by simply describing how hilarious it is. However, let's skip stanza 3 and continue with number 4. Now straight the shrill call sounded, that heralds in the fray, and loud was heard the clamor of the waters far away. Here, as you can see, Tolkien inserts the foundation of his tale, which is that he found the text blotted and parts of it lost. Therefore, certain important events are lost. But he continues. Swiftly rushed out that chiefest lord, and fiercely onward sped, his corselet grit about his waist, his close helm on his head. Now round in thickest throng there pressed these warriors red and green, and many a dashing charge was made, and many a brave deed seen. Full oft the speeding foeman was hurtled to the ground, while forward and now backward did the ball of fortune bound. Till Sekhet marked the slaughter, and tossed his flaxen crest, and towards the green-clad chieftain through the carnage pressed, who fiercely flanked by Sekret lay low upon the ground, till a thick wall of liegemen encompassed him around. His clients from the battle bare him some little space, and gently rubbed his wounded knee, and scanned his pallid face. And there Tolkien says, the rest of this scene and most of the remainder of the battle are blotted out. I hadn't time to put in any of my own, signed G.A.B. And because of this, we go from the 4th immediately to the 13th stanza, now with even more of Tolkien's classic humor and a sense of mystery about how things went down, now ultimately lost to history. Stanza 13. Meanwhile in the center, great deals of arms were wrought, where Cupid ran on cunning foot, and where the hill lord fought. But Cupid lo, outrunning the fleetest of the hosts, sped to where beyond the press he spied the great twin posts. He crossed the line, he scored a try, and then fly? Bother these blots, G.A.B. Thus we are forced to stanza 20. Then tenfold from the waters the shouts and din arose, like the roar of the raucous signal, when the dinner hour bull blows. Now backward and now forward rocked furious the fray, when sudden came the last shrill call that marked the close of play. This is unworthy of the poet, and so I amend to when sudden from the midmost host the clarion called for peace. Edit, it wasn't a clarion, and peace does not rhyme with fray. Stanza 21. Then cried the king Mensura, Ho henchmen laid the board, with tankards and with viands rare, from out thy toothsome hoard. For never I win shall warriors, who have fought a noble fight, all thirsty and a-hungering, depart without a bite. So let the war-worn clansmen, of banner green or red, sip my steaming cup of peace, and friendly break my bread. So at Mensura's bidding was straight a feast arrayed, and thither limped the men of war, and thirst and hunger stayed, when so they put forth from them the lust of meat and drink. Homer? Though ne'er from food or foeman did any ever shrink. Before them many a king and lord held speech, and many a cheer was raised for all those men of heart to whom brave war is dear. The editor won't let me put any more in, most of them just went home to bed. Signed G.A.B. And that's how he ends it. Needless to say, this poem became very popular very quickly around King Edward's school, and for those unaware still, the poem is not about battles and warriors at all. It's actually about a rugby game played at the school. A rugby game that was turned into a mighty battle through Tolkien parodying the Battle of Lake Regillus from Thomas Macaulay's The Lays of Ancient Rome. Tolkien's version adds the humor, the commentary by G.A.B., as well as the shift into a school sports game as opposed to an ancient battle. And it also changes the ending, because as you can imagine, the original did not end with friendly cheer, food and drink amongst former enemies, as was the case in the school environment of the rugby match. Reading this for the first time, something really clicked. For those that are familiar with some of Tolkien's other works, such as the Letters from Father Christmas, the way that he frames the story and adds commentary to the text is very characteristic of him. Not to mention how he takes something that is, on the surface, very serious, such as a battle, and turns it into the most unserious thing, while never breaking the illusion. As far as he's concerned, everything he describes is accurate and a deadly battle, but underneath that serious presentation, we all know that he's joking around to make his friends laugh as a teenager. And that right there is a side of Tolkien that I wanted to share that you may not have been very familiar with. A massive thank you to my channel members, and thank you very much for watching.